Oh, hello there. Yes, Sunday. Hooray. Or maybe not. Anyway, yes, today we have all the edifying delights of the new Culture Forum, where Philip and Peter and Rafe will be discussing things they know almost nothing about. It's quite amusing to watch in its own right. People who earnestly want to talk about things that they have no information on whatsoever. It's not so much blokes in a Wetherspoons pub as blokes in a Yates' wine bar, if I can put it that particular way. Anyway, let's dive in.
Starting with this extraordinary figure, actually, Philip, 2.5 million people on long-term sickness benefits in this country. In other words, people of workable, working age. Yeah. Do you think that this, first I want to say a genuine figure, it's obviously a genuine figure, but do you think this is kind of still one of the results of COVID? Or do you think there's been a cultural change? People just don't want to work anymore?
I think there has been a cultural change. I think there's a generational thing going on as well. I think lots of young people don't want to work because they see quality of life. They see that they often don't need to work because financially they don't have to, and they just want to do other things. I come across that all the time. But I think the post-COVID thing, yes, is really important. I'm not quite sure of the demographics here. I've just talked about young people. There will be an element of that, but the idea of sickness, the idea of being on benefits, being on sickness benefits, is probably older people, and I just wonder if it's the kind of people who would be working in the public sector. I don't know. I'm saying
you're just speculating, are you?
I'm speculating, but
right.
It might well be that long COVID thing of staying at home and doing that kind of thing. I don't know. I've got no idea, but I'm just flabbergasted by the insane number. Something's happening.
Right, yes, there's Philip. Now, you would have thought Philip, the academic guy, the guy who's an academic, I just want to say that, the academic guy, having presumably been told 5.5 seconds before he actually sat down what they were going to be talking about, would find something out about it, but he hasn't, because why bother? Yes, just being lazy, I think. But, yes, indeed, is it potentially the civil servants? Is it all their fault, says Philip? Who's actually a civil servant in real terms? And the answer is no, mate. It's mainly people with chronic illnesses who are over 50. And this is something that we've recently discovered in this country because, drum roll, of demographic change. You can criticise me for lots and lots of different things, but one of the things that I do with these videos is I actually will post articles which back up what I'm saying. Now, Philip's an academic. He doesn't feel he's got the need to do that because, after all, why let facts get in the way of just pontificating? Again, it's that Yates' wine lodge thing, isn't it? Yeah, isn't it dreadful, all these people that I don't really know anything about? Well, Philip, you really should, mate, okay? I know you work with young people, and therefore I'm sure a lot of those young people don't need to work. If you don't need to work, why would you? Anyway, let's move on to the renowned historian. Still not quite sure how he's a renowned historian, but let's move on to Rafe and see what he's got to say. I'm sure that'll be well researched as a historian.
Well, I'd like to have compared these stats with, say, 1946 to 1950,
yes,
right after the Second World War, when people really genuinely did have reasons to have mental health issues when your entire livelihood is lying in rubble around you and you've lost members of your own family. And of course, we didn't have the sort of welfare benefits then that we have now. And surely, and we know for a fact, you didn't have the same degree of weakness and apathy that was present then. Yeah. But of course, it's important to remember it's not just 2.5 million people. Those 2.5 million claiming benefits are those who are doing it for health reasons, but there are 5.2 million people claiming out of work benefits, and it's costing the Exchequer £26 billion a year. And so when we worry about our economic growth in this country and the fact that it is stagnating, it's no surprise when you have over 10% of the working population economically inactive, being bailed out or being supported by the Treasury. So if you want to have a strong functioning economy, we need to get these people back into work. When we have 1 million vacancies and you have at least 2.5 million people inactive, it seems quite obvious that you can easily fill the million vacancies we have without importing labour, but actually reskilling and retraining people, and also making the benefit system work more effectively, because it's not an incentive right now to go into work, because you will lose those benefits if you go into work.
And that's
so if there is a way to ensure and guarantee that your benefits won't reduce, at least you'll be able to start people on that road to employment and to dignity.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's Rafe. He's got a few stats. Doesn't know anything about the benefits system when the NHS and things like national insurance properly came to be with the post-war Labour government. Doesn't really have any idea about that, and we can't compare them with now for a wide variety of different reasons. But don't forget that that generation basically used to die very young compared to today. People didn't live with long-term illnesses in the same way that they do today. You can argue the rights and wrongs of that. But notice what he's saying here. He's basically saying, well, benefits don't pay. Yes, they don't. Work doesn't pay. No, it doesn't. That's a problem, and we need to retrain and reskill. Well, let's try that then, shall we? We also used to have a benefits system, which has now been changed because the government wanted to make it punitive because of all those lazy people, no doubt something Rafe was very keen on, but under Gordon Brown we had a system whereby they tried to make tax credits, etc., work pay. We've now moved away from that, and if you look at any of the statistics, sorry I do that, but basically vast numbers of low-paid people are supported through the benefits system. Why? Because work doesn't pay. Why don't people want to go to work? It doesn't pay. I personally have had the last week off. I could have worked last week, but I was being offered a whole big, drum roll, 8 pence more than minimum wage to do what amounted to a very hard job. I'm 60. I don't want to do it. I'd prefer to be poor than actually have to do that. I found the rate of pay deeply insulting for the skills level that I have and the skill level that I was expected to bring to the job. That's the British economy, Rafe. Maybe you should find out about it as, a historian. I could point you to some books, but, they probably won't be tourist guides to London, will they? Anyway, time we bring in Peter, I think. Yeah.
The fact that we come to this situation, and for those of us, who work around the clock, it's really annoying, as you both do.
Well, the point I always make out also is that we did manage to staff our restaurants before the 1990s. We had full industry. All right, yes, okay. We went off to the Caribbean to get bus conductors and people on London Transport. But by and large, and if you watch old films, the old Char Lady, right? There was always an East End woman, if it was in London, who was doing those duties of cleaning and cleaning the lavatories and doing people's houses and so forth. But the children and the grandchildren don't want to do those jobs anymore because they don't pay enough. You have to actually increase the salaries of people doing those jobs if you want to attract British workers to do those jobs, as well as tackle the indolence and the laziness of people too, to a large degree. But when I went to Liverpool, for example, I was amazed at how everybody there was from Liverpool who was doing those jobs. The hotel cleaners were all from Liverpool. Everybody you saw, because it has a very low immigrant population there. And I thought, well, what's happened to the working classes of London that they're actually not engaged in those jobs too? There has to be a way to attract them back in.
Physically they've gone.
Physically they're gone too.
But
they were coming from, taxi drivers come in from Essex as well, don't they? But there just needs to be a way to make those jobs that were once filled by the working classes and others attractive again to the
because that's that idea of dignity that you were saying. I think there's dignity in any kind of work. It's much more dignified to clean toilets than to just sit on your backside at home.
Before we start to sound, there's that famous sketch in Monty Python, You Were Lucky. We grew up
The Yorkshireman.
Yes. Before we start to sound too much like that, what do you think of the idea that actually there's something more fundamental going on here, of what I would call utter meaninglessness and exhaustion? So in other words, you're going to get people who just say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm depressed, I can't go. But when you get en masse this kind of behavior, it seems to me that it's like, you know what, it's just too much. we're battered to death. It's just one damn thing after another.
Yeah.
And I just wonder whether there is a form of cultural exhaustion there.
I think there is, but I think the word culture is important there because there's also the idea of community and society, and community and society is so fragmented now, people don't feel as though they need to contribute by working. You know, you contribute to
true.
your society because you are part of a society, you're part of a community. If you don't feel that, if your life is, for example, all online, you know, or or you don't know your neighbours, or you live...
Yes, see what they did there? They almost have it. They almost have it. It's like they're holding it and they're staring at it and they can't quite see what it is. Yes, it's the economy, stupid. You know, that economy that you benefited from for the whole of your lives. I know they work very hard, those three, but they've never done actual work, have they? Yeah? They've never actually meet people that actually are working class, other than taxi drivers. What a giveaway, Rafe, eh? Oh, yes, yes. Again, it's these people that they meet that they tip, and that's their only real sense of reality. And they still think magically that the economy is the same as it was in the 1980s. It isn't. We've moved on from that. The economy is an appalling state because of 40 years of neoliberalism. That's what's made people depressed, Peter, because it's really depressing living your life in that level of poverty, something you've never really come across. And the reason why you've never come across it is because you dismiss that notion that people do live their lives like that. Anyway, maybe we should change the economy, but we'd need to change capitalism. We'd need to move to a European model, and they ain't gonna do that because that'll cost us, and it'll only encourage the lazy ones. Anyway, do have a lovely and productive Sunday. Yes, 3 blokes in a Yates's